Okay, cool.
But you still need to clean it, and I don't know if you know, I learned this from having
Return receipt.
deal with major.
And receipt will come back to Alan.
The company that just deals. with
Which
mold
forms do you
testing,
need?
Whatever.
it
You know,
will
they
be
Clorox will
under-
It's in dry.
Yeah.
It doesn't kill the mildew, and what it does is make it come back
Forms training,
stronger, so you never want to use.
and then it will be, updated forms, 720.
If you want more mold.
And then buyers.
Yeah, it's just real musty in here.
Do you want them all open in tabs?
So then you.
Or do you just want to, you can navigate?
I can navigate it from there.
Okay, let me share the screen.
That should change, and the time roll has its own sort of scent, but it's not artificially scented, but. I think they put some lemongrass in there and it's, but, once you kill the mold, it should be, it's musty. If you really look, but you got the textile staff.
Let's talk to you.
Yeah. Now we got textile from there. I mean, we got a walk-in there, but it couldn't you found. Yeah. Not my good. Thank God I did it. We lost power, so I guess that was the problem. That was the problem. Plus, if I had Carolina. If I had.
All right, Aaron.
If I had lost power, I'd have had more than a foot of water. I've never gotten one.
Should be set.
Thank you.
Generator.
All right.
I don't have a generator. You guys using those? Yours are for one.
My dark is gonna be that.
That's Rob. What's that?
Probably carry workers comp for all the independent contractors who are being paid by them,
No.
because the liability goes to whoever pays. And like Allison is being paid by Keller Williams, but if she got hurt on the job, this is what they told me, her claim, if she wanted to say, hey, you know, something happened to me during working, it wouldn't be me who she could go after legally, but it goes through whoever pays her pay for that.
That is Keller Williams. How does, trying to think of how that would work.
It's probably covered in the independent contractor agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we as a firm would have some type of coverage there.
Can we have that conversation later? So-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Yes.
Thanks.
We
We've
will
just
figure that out.
got people in
Yeah.
Burlington
question.
that are waiting on us, and I want to try to be respectful of everyone's time.
Let me tell you what the key is.
So the first, Lorraine, do you mind? Sorry,
Yeah.
could end up with 40 different conversations here. Okay, so we are gonna cover, let me see if I can get this away. We're gonna cover buyer forms today. Fortunately, there were not a ton of major changes on the buyer form. On the buyer forms, but we are going to go through, I'm going to go through this just as I'm teaching this at all times, the proper way to complete these documents. So this is the property showing agreement. This is the form that you must have in order to go across. You don't have a copy of this one, but to go across the threshold if you do not already have a buyer agency agreement. This becomes like a 1-day temporary buyer agency agreement until you have a buyer agency agreement. So we fill it out much the same way that we do the buyer agency agreement. So this agreement is between, so this would be your buyer's name up here. And then would be KW Central, Keller Williams Central, the Melissa White team powered by Keller Williams Central, however your LLC is, both names have to be on here. Not just Keller Williams Central. So the Judy Weinstock team, you can do KW Central / the Judy Weinstock team. Like if I'm filling one out, mine says Ward Real Estate Group at Keller Williams. So however yours is set up, both of those names need to be on there. Services provided. So this is where you are going to provide the type, and I got to get this out of the way. Sorry.
There you go.
I don't know if that's better or not, but the type and location. So is it residential? Is it vacant land? What is it that what's the property that you're showing? And also location. It can be a specific location, meaning I'm showing 123 Main Street, and that's the only house I'm going to show you until we have a buyer agency agreement. Just make sure, or it could be several properties. If someone calls you off of the sign or from your website, whatever the case may be, to where you're showing this property without having yet a buyer agency relationship with them. Be specific enough, like not North Carolina, because really, are you going to drive to Wilmington?
So if you were to say Orange, Alamance, Durham County.
Yep.
For instance.
Yep.
But it's just for that day, so you're covered
Well,
for anything you showed that
We're
day?
gonna get to, we'll get to the time frame on the form. But yes, you could say Orange, Durham, and surrounding counties. Basically your area that you work. While with this form, the firm will represent the buyer as the buyer agent and will act in the buyer's best interest. Okay, so you are acting as their agent, even with this form at the time of showing. So if the buyer is asking you questions about the house, or if the buyer is asking you what are interest rates right now, you can answer all of those questions just as if you have a buyer agency agreement with them. And then disclose, and of course it says if buyer decides to make an offer on a property, then we have to go into a buyer agency agreement from there. And we also have to disclose what we expect to be paid. So this is your 2.4, your 2.5, whatever that number is that you expect to get paid from a buyer agency when you have a buyer agency agreement.
Rivers tried to send me to New Hampshire.
New-
They needed an address for a place I was not here.
No worries. Thanks for being here. What do we expect to get paid? And then there's a disclosure whether the buyer has or has not signed a document with another real estate agent. It's okay if they have, because maybe they don't know. Maybe we're working with an agent in Charlotte, and now they've decided, oh, we like this area better. Then it's fine. We just need to be able to contact that agent to say, hey, we're signing a buyer agency with this buyer in Orange County, Durham County for this area. And that just states that they will give us that information. So term of the agreement, so it becomes effective when it's signed and then expires at 11/59 on. This is where you put your date in. So if you're only showing them properties for today, like, okay, after today, then we're moving on to a buyer agency agreement, then you would put today's date. Let's say maybe they're in town for a weekend and they're going to be looking at several homes over the weekend. And all of this is, I mean, this is the backup plan, of course. I mean, our primary goal is to have the conversation, do the buyer consultation, get the buyer agency agreement signed before we start hauling and hoping. So whatever that time amount is the time that you put in there. And it can be for as long as you want it to be. I just wouldn't make it very long. It's kind of like speed dating. You know, I don't want this to be a 3 months because I want an agency agreement to know that I'm going to be compensated, because with this agreement, they can be out with other agents as well. So just for just a reasonable amount of time, however you want to date that person before you want to make them sign an agreement. Fee for showing services. This is really hard on this little. I can't get that to go away either. Buyer will pay firm a non-refundable fee. If your business, the way that you do your business, if you charge a non-refundable fee, then you would check that. Choose only one. They say that for a reason. No fee is owed by buyer under this agreement. Firm may not receive compensation for showing services from any other source. The amount, format, or rate of real estate compensation is not fixed by law, but is set by each broker individually and is fully negotiable. So basically, this is where you're not getting paid until you get that buyer agency agreement, unless you charge a non-refundable fee. And then we go to dual agency. So much like our buyer agency agreement, although this is much shorter, the firm may or may not act as a dual agent while providing showing services. We would like to encourage them to allow, so may, because if you're out showing a property that is maybe listed by Remax, but then we're driving through the neighborhood and you see Judy's sign in front of another house, and they're like, oh, well, while we're in the neighborhood, let's take a look at that house too. If they don't allow dual agency, you can't show them that house. So we want them, and then, so non-discrimination, all of that is, same on all forms. All right, here we go.
So can people buyers have multiple day showing like forms with somebody in Wake County, somebody here, somebody?
Showing forms, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and that question where it's asked, if you've signed something, it doesn't have a date. Yes, they may have signed something, but it may now be. A
Right.
lot of people don't know their agency agreements are still in.
Sure,
place.
of course. And that's the reason that it says they agree to provide us the information of who that agreement is signed with. Sometimes they may not even remember.
Yeah.
Working with real estate agents, again, this is just and I go through this, I know it's a simple form, yet I go through it because I think things that I'm seeing in compliance that sometimes get kicked back. So buyer agency, we always want to check buyer agency, right? Because that's the reason we're working with a buyer, is to represent the buyer and have a buyer agency agreement with them. Dual agency. We want to check dual agency because we want to be able to show and sell other Keller Williams Central properties. Designated dual agency. We may get into a situation where it's designated dual agency. So we would like to check that box as well. And all of this is discussed further within the agreement itself. One thing that I will say, make sure that you put your license number and the firm name, and again, firm name is KW Central / Melissa White property, Melissa White team. Both of those names there. Any questions so far?
You say at one point that we can, in Hillsborough, it can be Keller Williams Realty, not Keller Williams Central, or is that not true?
I mean, that's one of the DBAs, yes. Yeah, so it's fine. I think we talked about it as far as, like website, what the name is, it's on the website, and that's fine, because that's one of the DBAs of the Hillsborough office, yeah. They just have to, so the reason that both names are on there is so that the consumer has to be able to find you with the real estate commission. If they have a complaint, like they have to tell the real estate commission, this is who, but one of the DBAs for the Hillsborough office, there's about 4 or 5 of them, is Keller Williams Realty.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Karen, just, I know this is old, but the working with real estate form, I used to interpret it differently. I would check what I thought was relevant to that person, but my understanding later has become that you just need to check it all because we are to have explained it all. The check mark just means the explanation, not what our relationship with that particular buyer or.
Well,
whatever it is.
the working with real estate agents, the check mark means this is the relationship that I could be in with this particular buyer. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to be in, because you may not always be a dual agent. You may not always be a designated dual agent. Buyer, you're definitely going to check that one, but there may be situations where you would be. It's not going to be an unrepresented buyer because you've already said buyer agency up here, so you're not working with this particular buyer as an unrepresented buyer. That makes sense. Doesn't mean that all of them have to happen. It just means these are the case scenarios in which.
Unrepresented buyer even count.
Well, because you use it for a subagent of the seller.
Right, but they're different form.
Nope, they're not. You
Okay.
use the same form, but if you're subagent of the seller, that's the only box that you check on the working with real estate agents for buyers. The last box, subagent of the seller, is the only box that you check when the buyer's unrepresented and you're subagent of the seller.
And that's what new homes subdivisions do, right?
Yeah. They usually have it built in within their contract, but still it says, their box check says subagent of the seller. Yes, yep. Okay, so you do have a highlighted version just to kind of show you, the changes that were made. Again, who is the buyer? Make sure that we are putting the buyer's actual name, not a nickname, not a pseudonym, not any of those things. So if it is Jim and Joanne Smith, and Jim goes by Jimmy, don't put Jimmy, put Jim's real name that's actually on his driver's license. Because again, think about when we go to the attorney's office, what do the attorneys do? That's the first thing when they walk in the door. I need a copy of your license. And they're verifying to make sure that the person that's signing is in fact this true person. So make sure that you put their full names up there. If the property is in an entity or the buyer is buying it in an entity, then put the entity's name. So who is buying it? So for example, if I were representing Scott on buying a lot, my buyer agency would be SM Ward Construction because he's buying it in the entity name. Now, the human signs on behalf of the entity, but the entity is the owner. Make sense? Same thing if it's a trust. So if it's a trust, then the trust is the buyer. There is, because that's where that property is going to be held, is within the trust. Same thing with as being held within the entity. Human signs, but let's define who the actual buyer is. And again, firm is Keller Williams / the Judy Weinstock team. So make sure your LLC is on there. Again, services provided. We talked about this on the showing form. The same thing. Describe the type and location. And sometimes it might, I mean, you can put residential. You don't necessarily have to put new construction because new construction is residential. Because people have asked, well, I only put residential in here, but now they're buying new construction. You don't have to change anything. It's still residential. You know, sometimes like if you're talking with someone and they're like, oh, well, we're looking for residential, but we would be open to buying land and either building or putting a modular or something like that. Then you would want to put residential and vacant land as well. And the location, again, location in which your service area, not all of North Carolina.
If you're doing vacant land though, how do you indicate your compensation? What amount you're doing? Like land versus residential?
Yeah, when we get to compensation, we'll talk about it. Yeah.
I mean, the same thing could have existed on the other form.
Of
as
course,
well.
yeah.
And then there's the issue of you, at this point, if you're showing a property, you've checked with the listing agent and you find out that they're actually offering a 3% commission. And so, but the next property you're showing has 2.4. So.
Well, and that just depends on, again, that depends on how you do your business. If your compensation is 3%, then your compensation is 3% across the board, irregardless of what the seller or the firm may be offering. If your compensation is 3%, it's 3%. And that's the number that you're putting, not the number based on what the seller or the listing firm are offering.
No.
Buyer has or has not signed a document. Again, this is same thing with the showing form. They either have signed or they have not. Even if they've signed a showing form, again, they just agreed to give us the contact information so we can confirm our ability to sign an agreement with the buyer. Buyer is or is not working with a relocation, and buyer has received sample copies of the purchase contract and professional services disclosure. Several people asked about relocation companies. If you've worked with relocation companies in the past, that's the reason that we want to know if their work things can be a little different. Like the person that we have to communicate with, or they have to, you know, they have to buy within this certain area or whatever the case may be. So we just want to know that information. And it's also nice to know it and not get to the closing table and, oh, by the way, there's a 42% referral fee to Prudential on this particular buyer. Term of the agreement, this must be a definitive date. It cannot be TBD. It cannot auto renew, and it must be a reasonable amount of time. So, you know, reasonable amount of time is how long, number one, how much time and energy do you want to invest in these people to work with them before they buy something? And, or what's the reasonable amount of time that it would take to find what they're looking for? You know, if they're looking for that perfect property, and we're fine looking for 3 years until we find that perfect property, and you're willing to, set them up on an auto search, and when that perfect property pops up, then okay. Again, it just needs to be a reasonable amount of time. It cannot be indefinite, it cannot be TBD, and it cannot say, auto renews. Fee for services. So this is where you can check more. Typically, it'll tell you in parentheses, only check one. So this is one of those situations where you can check all that apply. So if your business model, you do a non-refundable retainer, you would put it here. Okay. Typically, it's going to be here, right? So it would be the percentage of the property's gross sales price. If you already know that, okay, they're buying a D.R. Horton house, and D.R. Horton says if we close before 12/31, we'll give you a $2,000 bonus, you can go ahead and pop that in here as well. You may not know at the time, so it might be blank. If it's a flat fee, is it what is that flat fee? And other specific amount. So within your business model, if you charge the client a transaction fee, this is where you would put that specific amount. So this is how we're getting paid. This is a transaction fee or whatever you may pass on to your buyer client. So for example, some people pass the $75 transaction fee that the market center charges. Some people pass that on to their client. So you would put $75 transaction fee. In some business models, agents charge for like a $395 or $450 or whatever that number is, transaction fee that covers their transaction coordinator, or the cost of that, whatever. If you're passing that on to the client, then that is the amount that would go there. So fee earned, due and payable, nothing changed about that. Firm may seek compensation from the seller or listing firm to pay some or all of the fee due in this agreement. However, buyer understands that neither a seller nor a listing firm has a duty to pay the firm's fee. In other words, if the listing firm is not willing to pay my fee and the seller is not willing to pay my fee, as we talked about just above, you, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, are paying my fee. Mutual termination, they just took that out completely. Protection period. So we actually have one of these that's going on right now. Interestingly enough, we always throw a number in there, or sometimes we leave it blank, or we don't really know what it means or whatever. But we actually have one that is that's going on right now, where the agent is protected for compensation because they filled out this this protection period. So if the buyer enters into a contract within X number of days after this agreement expires for a property introduced to the buyer by the firm, the fee in section 4 will be deemed earned unless buyer has entered into another agency agreement with another real estate agent or firm. So you show this buyer a property, and because sometimes people can do schemy things. You show the buyer a property, and the property expires the next week with the listing agent. And so somehow or another, the seller saw you on their ring, and they're like, I know who that person is. I'll wait till this expires, and then I'm going to call this buyer. So now they've reached out to your buyer directly. and said, hey, I'm going for sale by owner now. Let's cut all these realtors out of here. And so when you put that protection period in there, that's what protects you to still be compensated for showing them the property.
And is that like set a Google reminder for 60 days after you stop working with that person, check MLS or GIS for new properties?
No, I think that you might just get, we see it, well, the one that we're dealing with right now is on the listing side, not on the buying side. Because if they fire you as an agent and then they go and sign an agency agreement, then it goes away.
With another agent. It
that's
doesn't matter
correct.
If that agent literally goes and puts an offer in on the property that you took them to.
That's correct.
Didn't know that. All right, so, got it.
Yes, yes. So your buyer agency expires and then the next day they call me and say, hey, will you represent us in this transaction? Your protection period goes away because now they've signed an agency agreement with me. It would only be if they didn't sign another agency agreement and the buyer and the seller worked it out behind closed doors. You
If they-
brought them to the
If
property.
they terminate before your agency agreement is up, is that different? If they terminate, because like we do want to do a little side deal. And this expires in a month. If we terminate now, we can do this.
Yep.
Is that?
Same thing.
Okay.
Expires would also mean, because when we do a termination, we essentially are releasing them. So it would be the same thing, you know, and that would just be, so if you've got 45, 60, whatever your number is that you put in there, then when the buyer says, you know, we're just gonna put off looking for a little while, we want to terminate our agency agreement. The first thing that you can say is, well, I understand, I'm not authorized to do that. I'll have my broker in charge call you to have a conversation about it. And so then that's where you just have to let me know. And then I kind of, well, tell me what's going on. Yeah, let's get the real story here. And so if you're like, I'm done with them anyway, and you're just like, I don't want them, then yes, and you want to just let them go. This would just be where you would have a conversation to say, hey, I understand, you know, you guys are taking a break from looking. I hope that, you know, whenever, let's stay in touch. When it's time for you to start looking again, then I'll reach out. Just remember, we've got this clause within our agreement that if you were to purchase any of the properties that I showed you within the next 60 days, then I would still be owed compensation. Number 5 just says, this, you know, this is the NAR settlement that, compensation can be negotiated. It's not a set amount. Dual agency. This is where we, same thing, on our authorizations here. We would like to encourage the buyer to allow the firm to act as a dual agent. When you're explaining this, you know, if they say, well, no, I don't want you to act as a dual agent. Well, tell me what you think dual agent means and why you wouldn't want me to, why you wouldn't allow the firm to represent, to act as a dual agent. Well, I want you to represent just me. You know, these are the things that that you're probably going to hear. Well, that's exactly what I'm doing. And we'll get to that in the second section. But the first section just allows me to show you other Keller Williams listings.
Keller Williams Central is.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So next explanation. So now that they've said, oh, okay, sure. Yeah, that'll be fine. Then the next one is we would like to encourage them to check the third box. I do not know why the second one is even here. Right. Because the second one, essentially the third one says the exact same thing that the second one says, but then it goes into designated dual agency. So If you practice same agent, dual agency within your business model, there may be times where they would initial at the top, particularly if Melissa has a listing and somebody approaches her and says, I want to buy this house. And you're like, it's my listing. And you have that conversation and they're like, I'm fine with you being a dual agent. We've bought 10 houses. I just need that person in the middle to facilitate the transaction. We know what we want to offer, you know, the whole 9 yards. So that's where you would initial there with having a conversation. Most likely scenario is the third scenario, which is why we recommend them initialing the third scenario.
If you do find yourself in that situation, hey, it's my listing, we've got this person. Wait, no, I'm messing that up.
Somebody contacts you directly.
About, wants to work with me to buy my listing then, and we've already signed something. Do you have to redo paperwork after that conversation?
Good question. So the first thing that I would do is, because I do not practice same agent, dual agency. So the first thing that I would do is I would say, I'll be happy to show you my listing. And when they say to me, we've bought 10 houses, we know what we want to offer. Here's our offer. Okay, I'm the sub-agent of the seller. I just need for you to understand that I represent the seller and you do not have representation. That's when they sign that last
So you
check
take
box.
unrepresented buyer. like the
Unrepresented
one
buyer.
I've done the one time.
Yes,
Got it.
yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
where's the exact?
I prefer to do, so I don't do same agent, dual agent. So I do sub-agent of the seller. Now, have I been on both sides of the transaction? Many times, absolutely. I've always been sub-agent of the seller. It's cleaner, it's easier. Nobody gets mad at the end of the day because dual agency, they both think that you're representing them. When in fact, you're not representing anybody. And somebody thinks, oh, well, you were more favorable to the seller, or you were more favorable to the buyer, or, you know, whatever the case may be, somebody gets mad at the end. So that's why I don't do it.
Got it.
So most likely situation is the third one. Can this be changed was the question. Yes, absolutely. Form 740 change it is where you can make a modification to either your listing agreement or to your buyer agency agreement. Agency agreement and renewal is where you just change the
Yeah.
agency authorization. Yeah. And so we want to fill out the paperwork with the most likely scenario because is it a pain in the rear to have to go back and change paperwork? Yes, it is. However, it can be done. It's just, you know, because when so this is the time when I need like 8 screens up. When I've got a listing that is Melissa's listing, reviewing the file, I've got the buyer agent over here that has the buyer for Melissa's listing. So I've got my buyer agency form up here. Those forms have to match. So if Melissa, for example, if Melissa checked buyer does allow, and the agent on the other side checked buyer does not, now I've got to get Melissa to go back and change her paperwork to where her seller authorizes designated dual. That makes sense?
Oh, wait.
Because they have to be the same.
Okay, so,
They have to match. Now, if the buyer agent would have checked, have had them sign just here, and Melissa's seller signed here, we're all good. You just have to remember your dual agents. instead of designated dual agents.
Let's say I have a land listing, because this is maybe the only place I do actual dual agency.
You yourself?
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't do it either. It's straight up dual agency. So have a seller that's checked, yes, can be the same agent.
Mhm.
And you come, yours says designated, does mine now have to say designated too?
yes.
But I'm not representing the other buyer, so it doesn't really matter.
I know, but now you have to now you're designated to represent only your seller. So when you're both dual
I'm
agents,
always gonna represent my seller because I have the listing agreement. And it says I can do both, but then somebody else comes with.
okay, well then, then give me your definition of in your explanation of the difference between dual, well, number one, define dual agency for me.
Dual agency is when, from a buyer or seller perspective, you're able, from a buyer's perspective, you can show any property that the firm has listed.
Mhm.
So that's dual agency, straight dual agency where I am the listing agent and I'm representing both buyer and seller is
Same agent, dual agency.
sole dual agency.
Yes. All right, now designated.
Designated is when the buyer or the seller does not want you to operate as a pure dual agent representing both. And
Right.
someone, usually the person is designated to represent that agent only.
That client only.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But you both have to do the same thing. So both people within the office have to do the same thing. I can't be a designated dual agent and represent only my buyer and you be a dual agent because
I have no agency agreement with that buyer.
it doesn't matter. Agency agreements are unique to the person. Yours has to match the buyers when we're in the same firm.
This seems.
Well, the reason being is because what you disclose and your fiduciary responsibility changes from dual to designated dual.
Mhm.
That's the reason. So as dual, the fiduciary is to the client but when we're under the same umbrella, designated dual becomes fiduciary to each individual client, meaning you don't disclose any confidential information about your seller to the buyer. The buyer agent doesn't disclose any confidential information about their buyer
I still
to.
have I don't know that buyer from Adam's house.
No, but you know the agent. It doesn't have anything to do with the buyer. It has to do with the agent because the agent is with the same firm. And what the firm's fiduciary responsibility and how that changes from a dual agent to a designated dual agent.
So if we submit offers and all that fun stuff, y'all figure it out in the background and tell us to fix something next day. Cool. That's all. I want to do.
Yeah, yes. And I mean and it may very well, it has come up.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not calling. Hey,
No,
what did you sign on the person's agreement to whatever
No.
before I submit this offer,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
I'm
No,
not getting, you pick up
Right.
on compensation anyways.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pick up on that.
no, you are not. Again, the reason that I recommend we go with option number 3, because that's the most likely thing that will happen.
We can keep coming up with things that won't probably happen, but.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. So material facts, regardless of whether dual agency is authorized, firm must disclose any material facts to all parties in a transaction. This duty applies whether firm is buyer's exclusive agent, dual agent, including designated dual agent. So material facts always have to be disclosed. We all know that. They just put it on here again for the people that don't or forget. Should firm become a dual agent, buyer waives all claims, damages, losses, expenses, and liabilities other than for violations of North Carolina real estate license law and intentional wrongful acts arising from firm's role as a dual agent. This is not dual designated, this is just dual. So, basically it says, if you're gonna let me, it's a little rogue, but if you're gonna let me do it, then you can't come back and sue me. You can file a complaint with the real estate commission. But you can't come back and sue me unless I very intentionally did something wrong. This is just a reminder on, that there are places that you go to, like I would say probably about 85% of them now that have video, audio, or other surveillance devices. Let's not have a conversation standing in front of the Ring doorbell about the property. Let's also limit our conversation while we're inside the house, because even though the listing agreement says to the seller, you can't record audio, you can record video, but you can't record audio. That doesn't mean that, you know, the baby cam is not still on somewhere, or, you know, as sophisticated as these things have gotten. So let's not have a conversation. Again, it's just that reminder of that's there. Other professional advice, what are we? We are real estate professionals. We are not home inspectors. We are not pest inspectors. We are not surveyors. We are not attorneys. We are not any of those other things. Like, we happen to know some of those great vendors that we work with, and we'll be happy to refer you to them, but we are not them. So other professional advice, this is a reminder, don't give it and send it to someone else. We are, that's where I like to say that we are the librarian, not the library. We tell you where to go get it, we don't give it to you. Inspection cost. This was a big one that got changed on the listing agreement in January, and my phone ran off the hook. Inspection costs, unless otherwise agreed, buyer must pay for all inspection costs and other professional services related to purchasing a property, including all items in Section 8. This duty to pay will apply regardless of whether the buyer closes on the property. This is just a reminder to your buyer when we're going through the buyer agency agreement. Because inevitably that inspection comes back, right? And what did the inspector say? Recommend licensed HVAC contractor. So what does that buyer do? The buyer asks the seller to get a licensed HVAC contractor to come and check out the HVAC unit. Nope, buyer, that's on you. All inspections are on you. You can ask, and the seller may have some fool of an agent that will say, yeah, pay for it. No, it's the buyer's responsibility to pay for it. Any and all inspections are the burden of the buyer, not the burden of the seller, and the buyer agrees to pay for it. And reminding the buyer, okay, well, we're terminating. Well, don't forget, you still got to pay those people, whether you terminate it or not. Confidentiality, same. Wire fraud, again, it's in red. It's just a reminder that we do not get in the middle of wires. We put people in touch with who the wire is going to, and we step out. Any additional terms? This would be
I have one.
Yeah.
Doesn't Jodon do like if they're not pre-approved, that they've got to start that process within X days or the contract terminates? Basically, like, if you don't have your stuff together in 2 weeks, I don't work with buyers, aren't ready to do something, this will be null and void.
whatever you have that
So
might,
you
yeah.
can, you can, we're not drafting any legal documents, we are just stating a specific term for
Yes.
this client, if we choose to.
Yes, yeah. This might also be somewhere where you would put Buyer is working with real estate agent in Wilmington to purchase property in Wilmington as well. Just for clarity, transparency, all of that. Termination, so this is where they just moved termination. So this agreement may only be terminated or modified by a written document signed by all parties. It may not be assigned except by written consent of all parties. In the event of termination, firm may require reimbursement of fees, costs, and expenses in addition to other remedies. So again, this might be like your additional terms might say buyer agrees to pay firm $500 if this agreement is terminated. Something to that effect. And so again, we may be asking for reimbursement of fees, costs, and expenses. Any questions? Does anybody know what time it is?
1:56.
All right. I have just enough time to get through this one because it's very quick. So that's exclusive. We're gonna go through non-exclusive. Judy, I'll just take one and then pass them. Because the changes are very much the same. Again, who is the agreement between and firm and any LLC. Non-exclusive, here, the only thing that they added was a bonus on here. Payment for fee, just remember on a non-exclusive, buyer will or will not be responsible for paying the fees firm. Again, will, because we don't work for free. Mutual termination, again, they knocked that one out. Dual agency, same scenario. Everything else is the same. Again, same thing with termination. Any questions? Any questions from Burlington? Thank y'all for being there. Thank y'all for watching me virtually. Thank you all for being here. What a pleasure it is to be here with you guys in this new fabulous facility. And yeah, we look forward to more in-person trainings here moving forward.
And not in New Hampshire, wherever Rivers told me to go.
Hampton Point.
She sent me an address for a place I was not here.
Appreciate it. Sorry.
I was like looking on Facebook, I'm like, is there any place to be posted where this is? I guess invite only. Guess I'm
Here, I'm gonna let you undo all of that.
Yep.
Did we get like a grand tour?
Sure, I'll give you a grand tour.
You are Keith or our phone at